Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Well, I figured it was about time to create some content about the recent U.S. military operation that took place against Venezuela, capturing Maduro, capturing Nicolas Maduro and his wife. Now, what's interesting is a lot of folks, a lot of analysts, a lot of persons, especially in the media, and not persons in the media as well, are very surprised about what happened and how it went down, how it occurred. The ease at which the U.S. was able to capture Maduro and bring him to the United States. Now, a while back, I did a very brief analysis as the U.S. buildup was occurring, and I tried to compare and contrast, essentially, hypothetically, what would be the challenges of the U.S. conducting a military operation against Venezuela. And at that time, what I did was say, okay, what you will see will essentially be a fight between, let's say, George Foreman in his prime versus the destroyer of cities, Zoran Mondami. So just envision that. Zoran Mondami, who cannot bench press his own body weight against George Foreman, arguably one of the hardest hitting heavyweights in the history of the fight game. Arguably. Even if George Foreman had an arm tied behind his back, he would eviscerate Zoran Mondami, destroyer of cities. And at the time, many folks seeing that piece of content probably laughed at it, scoffed at it, because a lot of folks will look at, let's say, the Venezuelan military. They'll say, "Oh, wow, it has 100,000 men. It can call upon 1 million reservists. It has this massive militia capacity. It has hundreds of Russian tanks and armored infantry fighting vehicles. It has a Russian air defense network." I'm sorry. All right, look, great, fine, yes. If Venezuela was fighting a conventional conflict, let's say against Guyana, okay? Let's say Venezuela was fighting a conventional conflict against Guyana. Yes, it's large amount of manpower. It's integrated Russian air defense system would probably come in handy. It wouldn't even need that sort of equipment to attack Guyana. It could use its jungle brigades and its ranger brigades, its Caribbean ranger brigades as they're called in Venezuela, and they could overwhelm Guyana. The Russian equipment would come in more handy against a country like Colombia. But against the United States, that's just a completely different narrative, a completely different scenario that you're looking at. Now, look, could the United States have challenges in the days and weeks to come in terms of what happens next in Venezuela? Yeah, possibly, especially if we decide to put thousands of troops on the ground. That could become problematic. And the whole concept of not sustaining any casualties, that's going to go out the window. But again, if you look at what happened 2 nights ago, or the night before last, was what the United States does best in terms of its capabilities. There are capabilities that exist in the U.S. War Department that the average uninformed urbanite, the average person in the media, really has no concept of the greatness of the technology, of the amount of training that exists in the U.S. military. Now, granted, look, Venezuela, fairly large army, fairly large, somewhat well-equipped military, although its system has caused those military apparatuses and agencies to decline rapidly. And then you have to ask yourself, well, what realistically is Venezuela able to do? You know, looking at something on paper versus reality is completely different. Now, look, the United States was very quickly able to eliminate the Venezuelan air defense network. And that consisted of aircraft, that consisted of American older F-16s, probably just a handful that were in operational order, maybe a half a dozen, maybe more, maybe less, of Russian Su-30s that could have taken to the air and were not able to take to the air. They were eliminated on the ground. The Russian S-300s, whatever other systems that may have been handed over to Venezuela prior to the military operation, all that stuff was eliminated. The United States, look, given it had at least 6 months, if not longer, to prepare for this operation. And I imagine that even during the Joseph Biden administration, there were contingency plans that were put in place, operational contingency plans that were put in place to launch this sort of operation against Venezuela. The U.S. military knew what it needed to do. It knew what it had to do. It knew what capabilities it needed to bring to bear. And then once the U.S. was able to eliminate that air defense network, and it wasn't difficult to do that. You know, just because you have a dozen or so S-300 systems, launchers, and a few Buk air defense systems and whatever else you're using. Look, the United States knew exactly where those systems were. They could see exactly where those systems were. And in real time, U.S. capability started to operate against those systems. And essentially what the United States wanted to do, especially in the early stages of this operation, where it was sending these Delta Force and DEA operatives into Maduro's castle, his fortified residence, the United States had major capability over the country right now. And these are just some examples of what was operating near or over Venezuela in those hours that it took the U.S. to insert those helicopters, land, and grab Maduro. Yes, the Venezuelan military on paper is large. It can call on large amounts of troops. But that is irrelevant when a country like the United States, what I call, controls the clock. The United States can see what you are doing. You cannot see what the United States is doing. And the U.S. has the ability to launch an attack on any aim point in the country. In all likelihood, the U.S. could see what was happening anywhere in Venezuela. Look, all of the Venezuelan military was not positioned in Caracas, the capital. A lot of what happened was directed towards a few key military bases in the capital, such as this area here. So just imagine this, right? You're looking at what is essentially a satellite rendering of a picture that has taken place probably a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Who knows? The United States had dozens of sensory systems over Caracas that at any point could launch an attack on anything that was moving at 2 o'clock that morning. And traffic in all likelihood is not incredibly heavy in Caracas at 2 o'clock in the morning, like any major city. It's much lighter. So any military movement in which the Venezuelan government was trying to direct forces to a certain location to try and conduct a military operation to prevent the U.S. from taking Maduro could never have happened. And two, in all likelihood, because the United States was able to destroy the communications and early warning systems of the Venezuelan military, the Venezuelan military did not have the ability to communicate. And when the Venezuelan military did communicate, I can guarantee you the U.S. was listening to exactly what was being said, whether it was on a hard line or through other encrypted comms. Promise you, the United States knew what was being said. And again, not only that, when those comms would be initiated, these systems they're just so advanced and so incredible, you really have to see it to believe it. And what I mean by that, if a battlefield commander, if a Venezuelan brigadier general or colonel or major or captain, the United States, in all probability, knew where many of those individuals were. So you're going to ask yourself, well, how is the United States going to control Venezuela post-Maduro? Well, the only option, obviously, is to fly in the 82nd Airborne and get boots on the ground. No, that is not the only option. The United States is in a position right now where, through back channels, for instance, what's the Ministry of Defense, Vladimir, I don't know his last name. If the United States knows where he's at, in all probability. And if not, they're going to find out where he is at. And not just through signals intelligence and the sophisticated systems that the United States has, but just through handing out money. I mean, handing someone $1 million in an impoverished nation state is world changing. And you don't think that person is going to tell you where, if they knew where a certain individual is? So there's a real-time database where all these leadership functionaries, where they currently are. And all they have to do, these intelligence agencies of the United States, is say, look, you're going to play ball, or we're simply going to kill you. You're going to die tomorrow. You're going to die, and your family's going to die. So you can play ball, do what we say, live a nice life, or while you're traveling at some point here in the very near future, a Hellfire missile with swords is going to hit your car and decapitate you and your entire family. So, what do you think? You want a deal? You want to play ball? Which brings me into the final part of this. It really doesn't matter if you think it was right or wrong what the United States did. As I've said before, We are human beings. We are an inherently aggressive species. If I have a house and you have a house, and I have run out of food and you have plenty of food and I am better armed than you, do you think I am going to watch my family starve, or I'm going to arm up, come over and take your food? That is what happens. Why are we doing this? Is it for the liberty of the Venezuelan people? Of course not. Of course not. This is about might making right. And it doesn't matter if the person wielding the might is right or wrong. At the end of the day, if they win, they are going to be right, because they will control the narrative. They will control history at that point. Is it about gold? Is it about oil? Is it about natural resources? Of course it is. Absolutely. Absolutely. Is it about the exploitation of resources? Yes, absolutely. Because this is what we do. We who control the might need what you have, so we're going to take it. It's that simple. And it's the truth. And that's what's happening. And in this case, you have a very unprudent leader who is an asocial communist who decided that he was going to poke the bear. He was going to poke the bear, the American bear, not the Russian bear, the American bear. And look what happened. Now, is this over with? Could things get messier from here going forward? Possibly. Obviously, what do they call those guys? The collectivoses, or these left-wing, asocial, want to suck off the tit of those innovators in the country who want to actually do something with their lives, right? So are they gonna rise up and cause problems? Maybe. They don't have anything else to do. There's high rates of unemployment in a socialized country in which you have a large percentage of the population who are do-nothings other than putting on a uniform and toting around a Mosin Nagant bolt-action rifle and a red scarf, right? Okay, fine. Yeah, that's probably going to happen. But is it going to be effective? Hard to say. We'll have to see what the U.S. response looks like and what happens and how things go down. And it may not get as messy as what many of you think it is. It may be a path to prosperity for Venezuela, or at least for those Venezuelans who want to get up, stand up, and do something, right? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe a large segment of the population remains in poverty, and that segment of the population would remain in poverty anywhere they would go. If you transplanted that population to the United States, to Sweden or Norway or any of the more advanced civilized Iceland, right? Not Madagascar, Iceland. They would be sucking off the teat of everyone else. There was anyway, I'm not going to get into that, but that is what happened. And that is what is going to happen. Excuse me. Might makes right. Venezuela has something that the United States wants. Does it need it? Maybe not. Maybe. And this is what is going to happen. It has happened throughout history. It has happened going all the way back, predating the Roman Empire, to the Hittite Empire, to the Assyrian Empire, to the wars between Carthage end Rome, to the seizure of the Sudetenland, to the conflict in Iraq. This is what we do and how we do it. And it's not going to change. I would say you just have to embrace it. You have to embrace it. Maybe one should embrace what you would call fascism light. Like if you had to live in two different societies, right? If you had to pick between, let's say, fascism light and communism light, what would you choose? What would you choose? What would you pick? Usually the asocial lazy ass is going to gravitate towards socialism and communism. That's what I think, at least. Opinions are like you-know-whats. Everyone has one. But that's it for today. As always, thank you for joining us. More to come very, very soon. Good day.